What's going on, gang, and welcome back to Scared of Normal. I'm Mike Murfitt, joined by my co-host Chase Willie, and on this episode, we're stoked to be sitting down with the guy who puts the PH in fun, Jason Cartwright. Dude, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I'm excited to tell some stories and learn a little bit more about Funbar.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Of course, man. I think, when's the first time we sat down? It's been a couple years now, right?
Yeah, I think it was a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
Heck yeah.
Right as Funbar started kicking off and became officially a business.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
2 years, man.
Yeah, 2 years in.
Congratulations on that,
Thank
by the
you.
way. I'm excited to really dig into it, but 2 years is a huge mark for small businesses, I'm sure you know. But yeah, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but not many make it to 2 years. So massive congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's add 2 more to it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. 10 more. I
Yes.
can't wait, dude. Yeah. I know you've gone through persevering over some gnarly stuff the last couple weeks, and we'll dig into that in a little bit. But, before we get into the specifics of everything going on with you and with Funbar, give us a little brief history of who you are and what Funbar is.
Okay. Well, a brief history. Well,
give us the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch, that quick. I grew tired of what the majority of the market had to offer for trail snacks. I'd been in the wine business for about 20 years now, and I started goofing off in the kitchen and making bars for myself, giving them out to friends on runs and rides. And one night, thanks to the wine business, after a few drinks, I was like, well, why can't I turn this into a business? So I started doing that.
Amazing.
It was just a side hustle as I was making a living in the career. And then I got laid off in the middle of 2022, and the side hustle became the official hustle.
That's sick, man. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I love, too, that, like, your official hustle was the catalyst. You know, you're having a couple drinks, and it's just like, oh, wait, we can make this a reality? That's pretty rad, man.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Are you still in the wine business, by the way?
Sort of.
Okay.
I'm 99% out of it, but I'm picking up some shifts at a little local bottle shop to try and pay the rent.
Right on. Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah, that's, a great part of this story that I'm excited to get into as well. But let's throw it all the way back, man. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up mostly in Maryland. I was about 10 when my family moved me and my sister from San Diego out to Frederick, Maryland. So it was a culture shock being a little beach rat moving to farm country in Frederick, Maryland.
Yeah, that's a crazy move. Do you guys have family out there?
My parents originally from Delaware.
Okay.
So close by, but we got moved out for my father's work at the time. And they escaped Delaware, as they put it, they escaped to San Diego and weren't all that excited about moving back to the East Coast.
Interesting.
So it was strange kind of growing up with that attitude of, we're back in Podunk, Cowtown, not big fans of it. So I kind of grew up with that mindset as well.
How old were you when you moved back?
10.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when I came of age and graduated high school and wanted to escape the East Coast as well, I was like, I want to move to Colorado. I want to go snowboarding. I want to be in the mountains and get away from all this and explore what the rest of the country has to offer. So in 1999, I drove a U-Haul, brought my 1969 Volkswagen Bug with me.
Yeah,
What color was
I
it?
didn't know you
It
had
was
one of
green
those.
and white.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was
Man.
it was pimp. It was
Best year, too.
Yeah, it was back in the day when custom cars were, I'm sure it's still a thing. I shouldn't say back in the day, but I was kind of falling into that. I had a custom paint job, redone interior, had a bass tube in the back.
Ooh.
It was thumping. Yeah. But I took care of all the pretty things. And then East Coast salt eventually rotted out the baseboards.
Oh, shoot.
And the suspension and everything just kind of fell apart from
Oh,
there.
geez.
man.
Yeah. But there's some some good days rocking that bass tube in the back.
That's sick, man.
That's
Heck
sweet.
yeah. And the 69 bug, man. I love it.
Yeah. So I ended up in Durango, Southwest Colorado, went to school at Fort Lewis, and moved up to Denver with now my wife of coming on 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. That's
Thank you.
huge.
It's pretty rad. But I didn't know one neighborhood from the next in Denver. So we moved to the Highlands in Denver, where my wife grew up. And I was working multiple jobs out of college, not knowing what I wanted to do. REI being one of them. I didn't know the term outdoor industry at the time, but I was like, that's where I want to be a professional ski bum somehow. I was working other jobs and eventually landed a gig at a wine shop a couple blocks away from our house. And that's what got me into the wine industry
Heck yeah.
full time.
Yeah, I feel like that's a tough industry to break into too. So that's cool. You got your first taste at like a bottle shop like that, and then it exploded from there.
Yeah, they hired me to, stock the shelves, make deliveries, and they taught me, the basics of wine and moved on from there.
Right on.
Very generous owners that at the end of the night, it's like count the drawer, open a bottle of wine.
Heck yeah, that's cool. Gotta love people like that, man.
Yeah.
That's a very special place to cut your teeth, especially in like a small business and in an industry that's kind of pretentious at times.
Yeah, sure can be. Luckily, also with their generosity of teaching me everything, they quickly taught me, you'll never know everything about the wine business, so don't try to pretend you do. The humility of it all was great to grow up in that world with them.
Certainly. Yeah. There's a good lesson in that for just life in general too, man. Like,
right.
Yeah, you're never going to know it all, man. So you're always a student.
That's right.
I want to throw it back to you moving to Colorado. Had you ever come out here and visited before?
Just to visit a couple colleges.
Okay.
I told we visited Fort Lewis in Durango and Western State in Gunnison. And I chose and ended up choosing town and campus over ski resort, which was the opposite of what I left Maryland to do.
That's kind of funny.
I should have chosen Crested Butte, but ended up down in Durango instead. So that was it, really. My time out in Colorado.
Heck yeah. Were you skiing before you moved out here? Like, did you have that bug before you came out, or was that like a newfound thing when you came to Colorado?
No, my parents would take us to Mammoth Mountain in California. And then when we moved, it was like the rise of snowboarding. So I was, 11, 12, 13. I was like, I'm going to be a snowboarder.
Heck yeah.
So I started doing that on the icy slopes of southern Pennsylvania. Man, this was back when to make a half pipe, they were literally excavating out of the mountain.
Oh man.
To dig into it to try and get that vert.
How it's changed.
Oh my God. So yeah, snowboarded for a long time, ended up getting my free pass through college as a snowboard instructor, shoveling jumps and fixing rails at Purgatory.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Was that kind of the sport that you gravitated to the most as a kid, or was there something through school or anything outside of school that you kind of took in as your sport?
No. I mean, in college, or excuse me, like in high school at that time, I played tennis. I was on the cross-country team. That was more to escape into the woods and smoke cigarettes and misbehave.
Super East Coast.
Yeah. But yeah, like we were just talking about skateboarding, that was so hard for me. I never got anything accomplished in skating, but snowboarding kind of seemed a little bit like that. And snow doesn't hurt as much as concrete.
Yeah.
That's also cool to be like growing up in the era of that sport really finding itself and like actually becoming something. Like that had to be a pretty special time to like be finding something so new.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I bet that was really rad.
It was. And I had, never could have imagined it turned into the industry that it is today.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, the people that I've talked to that like grew up in that era, they all say the same thing. Like, it was just like a fun like counterculture type thing, and now it's in the Olympics. It is the snowboarding that we know and love today, and it's pretty cool to see how that's progressed. So
yeah,
that's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah,
how something can start so counterculture and then just become so mainstream and
so rapidly too,
so quickly. Yeah,
there's not too many things. Like, look how long it took skateboarding to be a mainstream thing, like, decades longer than snowboarding. So yeah, it's pretty crazy when you deconstruct that. But
yeah, I left snowboarding years ago too to go even more counterculture, maybe with my age. And I saw a couple of guys ripping through some trees when I was going up the chairlift one time. They were telemark skiing. And I saw them and I was like, holy shit, that looks amazing. Like, I got to try that, and never look back.
Wow. Interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's so rad. But you see like 3 people on the mountain doing it.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It is it is a very niche thing, but the people who do it, they love it. So
yeah.
I can't imagine. I feel like I would be so uncoordinated trying that. Having my heel lift up out of the ski going downhill. Cause I ski tour. So I know what it feels like to have the heel lift off of the ski. And every time I point it downhill.
Yeah, terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I tried alpine skiing again a couple of years ago. And when I get into some steep, tricky situations, I'd find myself trying to make that move because I stopped skiing for a little while kids were growing up. And I'd found myself instantly trying to get into that telemark stance. And it's like, oh, this isn't working. This isn't working.
Yeah, the muscle memory is trying to kick in.
Yeah, so I had to sell that setup and get back at it.
That's funny.
That's awesome. So you said you went to Fort Lewis, right?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you go to school for?
Business.
Okay.
Just general business degree. Nothing too exciting.
Do you feel like that degree helps you in what you're doing today, or do you feel like you're still learning stuff where you're like, man, I wish I would have learned that in school?
Maybe if I got in, used some of those skills right out of school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like now I look at an Excel spreadsheet and I'm like, man, I used to know all the tricks, to build formulas and trick those things out. And now I'm just like, I can add numbers up.
Well, the beauty now is you have Google, you can just be like, how do I do this? And yeah, it gives you the formula. So.
Oh yeah. Lots of Googling to start this business.
Yeah. I love that though. That's such a cool thing. It lowers the barrier to entry for people who are looking to start something new. Like, I can't imagine starting a business 10, 15, 20 years ago. That's not that long ago, but like the resources we have now from social media to Google and all these different search engines, like there's so much information out there now where it's like, it's pretty easy. It's probably never been easier to start a business, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Yeah, there's education just at your fingertips right now.
Yeah, pretty insane.
You don't need to go to a college to get that. I think there's value in going to college in other areas outside of just straight education and resources. But yeah, you can just go on YouTube and search, how do I do this? I mean, that's how most YouTube searches start. Like, how do I? And then it autofills in whatever it is. And
I had a friend tell me that recently where he was just like, YouTube's just a search engine, right? Like, and I was like, oh, whoa. Like, I've never really considered it that. I've always considered it like a entertainment platform. But every time I'm looking for how I can do something, it's YouTube. So that's kind of crazy to think about it like that. So talking about using these types of search engines or figuring out how to start a business, going back to that first, conversation you said you were having over wine where you're like, I can do this myself. What was the first thing for you to get into the business world? Like, what was that barrier to entry for you?
Well, the barrier entry further back, like I always felt I had this entrepreneurial drive, but nothing ever really hit me of like, oh, that's what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then this, it was through the pandemic. I was not alone. A lot of people sat back and, looked at their lives, and I was one of them that said, what am I doing? It's been a great career. Got to travel the world, see a lot of amazing places thanks to wine. But I didn't come to Colorado to be in the wine business. So, a lot of self-reflection and developing this recipe. I was like, oh, this I could get back into full-time the outdoor industry this way. There's a lot of crap out there, and this, I like it. It tastes good. So it kind of went there. The barrier, initially when I said that out loud, letting everybody get their laughs in first, and they were, oh yeah, sure you can, ha 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 ha, good luck. And then they all stopped and they're like, okay, well, let's say you started this business. What do you name it? My daughter was 7 at the time, and she just chimes in, Funbar.
That's awesome.
And we all stopped and looked, and we're like, that's pretty good. So
7-year-old chief marketing officer over there.
Yeah.
Man. Wow.
Yeah. At farmers markets, and anytime she's out and about, like walking into a store, she's like nudging me and like, tell him who named it.
That's awesome, dude. I love that. That, to me, like, again, like gives something another layer of like authenticity as well. Like we were talking about this before the podcast, but creating a brand that has authenticity, and like that is, you didn't just like search what should I name this thing or use a name generator. It was like the most authentic way of naming something. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was pretty rad. Barrier to entry though, we have Google. I had a full-time job making good money. So I was able to, it's like, oh, I've got nothing to do today. I'll research, what licenses do I need? What city, county, taxes, on and on. So I took it nice and slow for about 18 months, as I started figuring it out. So time, I guess, would be a good barrier. I hate to admit it, but, everything costs money.
Yeah.
And having, like your business, being able to bootstrap it and do it properly, and not go instantly $50,000 into debt when you haven't even sold product number 1, avoiding that. Then the barriers really in the energy bar world, the barriers is getting people to taste them.
Sure.
So many people, throughout are just like, oh my God, another friggin' energy bar? Are you kidding me? No. But then I see their reactions when they taste them, and they're like, oh yeah,
this is different.
Okay.
I that kind of gets into one of the questions that I wrote down, that you're kind of a one-man team doing all of everything, and marketing your product is such a big piece to try to get the word out, especially being a brand, a relatively new brand, a small brand. Where has your focus been in the marketing piece in the last 2 years? And have you kind of seen success, and are you planning on doing that going into the 2024 season, or are you thinking of switching some stuff up?
Focus, I don't know. It doesn't sound right, but I don't know that I've had that much, specific focus. Started direct to consumer. Where under the Colorado Cottage Foods Act, you can produce and package foods out of your house. So that was a good way to, kind of get the website up and running, and try and generate sales, just word of mouth from there. Once I got a commissary kitchen, I could then sell wholesale. So it was like, okay, I'm going to bounce around to some wine shops. I did a little bit of that too. I double dipped.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, some bike shops, some running stores, and just try and, build that wholesale base. Focus moving forward. We'll see a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Just trying to get people to taste it and enjoy it. And yeah, I feel like you said, that is such again, one of those barrier to entry things, getting somebody to try something and understand why it is different. Because at the end of the day, like, you could have all the marketing resources in the world, but at the end of the day, those are just words usually. And so getting somebody to actually try something and understand, like, okay, this is different and here's why, that's very difficult, especially when you're a one-man team.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Like, how have you been getting the product into people's mouths to try it?
Lots and lots of tasting. I don't have per se a endless budget for marketing, so I can't build that from there. I'm of the mindset, and I think this came from my time in the wine industry. Like, as soon as a wine became a brand, it's like, no, I'm not interested. I'll sell it to pay the mortgage, but when, you have farmers that are producing wines out there, it's like, okay, that's cool. That I want to talk about. That's what I want to learn about, that and what they're doing differently. And that's kind of the mindset I took starting Funbar. Was it's the product, and it's what's inside the bag that counts, and that's what's going to get people turned on to it, rather than flashy logo, or they're sponsoring the Boulder or whatever it may be. Getting people to try the product, like, okay, this is good. That was the goal.
I love that approach, because so many brands do the opposite, or they believe the opposite is true. I was just listening to a thing actually like 2 days ago. They were talking about Olipop and how much they spent, or how much they raised to like launch the brand initially. And they raised $100 million, and $80 million of that was logo, branding, marketing. Whoa. And I was like mind blown by that, because like that's a brand that seemingly came out of nowhere. But then you kind of like roll it back and you're like, okay, well, $80 million, like that'll do it for you. Like, they did a lot of studies, they figured it out. But like, then when a smaller person like you or I goes and starts a brand, and you think that that's the formula for success, it's like, well, you don't have $80 million to just like roll out there and be like, we're going to make a logo that speaks to people. Like, they had the best agency in the world make that, like, but most people don't understand that going into it. So they go after that. They're chasing basically smoke and mirrors, as opposed to like, hey, this is the reality of, we want to put this product in front of you and taste it. And then maybe we'll put money into the logo down the road, or whatever it is. The marketing comes secondary, but I think that's a really cool approach.
Well, it was a necessary approach. Talking to my wife years ago, and, talking with people that I was introduced to in the marketing world, they're like, $8,000 to walk through the door. You want a full on advertising, social media, logo design, blah, blah, blah. You're looking at $40,000, $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's like, no.
Yeah.
You haven't sold bar number one. We're not taking out a home equity line of credit, just for marketing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was necessary, and I'm glad.
Good on her for being the voice of reason, though. Like, really though, like, I mean, there is like some hindsight to that, to be like, well, if we would have spent that money, would we have gained it back? Because maybe, who knows? But I think the way you're approaching it is far more authentic and genuine, because that's how I want to see it. It creates a story, and like you said, it's a actual product. You're not just like marketing this crazy brand that has a bunch of like really fuck you money behind it,
Yeah, and I've never been in the food industry before too. So had that happened, and to be catapulted into this world, like, I wouldn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
I've learned so much, taking it step by step over the years, that, it feels so much better.
That's awesome.
I think it's kind of the same mentality as looking to do something in order to provide value to people, rather than looking to do something in order to make money.
Yes.
Right? You're putting the emphasis on the product, not the visual display of it, so that by the time people actually connect with it, they're really connecting with the product and not the external brand that surrounds it. I'm a graphic designer, and I love brands, and I see the value in proper branding. But proper branding only goes so far.
Yep.
If as soon as you tear open that package, you're like, this is just another, product on the shelves, then all of that illusion kind of slips away. So
yeah, I don't care how cool the packaging is. If it tastes like crap, if it's pulling fillings out, if it's stuck in my tooth or my throat, 5 miles down the trail, no thanks.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's like a really good thing to bring up too, especially in the era of so much like white labeling and co-packaging going on. Like you see it for all these celebrities, like they're launching food products or beverage products left and right. And these companies are all pretty fly by night. Like they don't stick around very long. And I think a lot of that is because they make this really beautiful brand. They have this celebrity spokesperson behind it, but they're not actually focusing on the product that they're selling. And so what ends up happening is like, yeah, they might like get a good nut off of it in the beginning because, 100,000 people went out and bought it, but are they going to buy it a second time? Is the product good enough like to live up to that celebrity's name? Is it going to live up to the branding? Like, the devil is in the details. And in this case, the product is the details. So I like that you've kind of been forced to focus kind of reverse engineered from what the big guys are doing and saying like, cool, we're going to focus on the product and then we'll start figuring that stuff out as we go. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is it about Funbars that you would say makes it different from the other products?
Well, I got started basically on a flavor profile. I think a lot of stuff out there tastes chalky and chemically that I just didn't dig. And I'm a huge texture fanatic, I guess, where I needed something that I could easily chew and swallow, while I'm out there moving with an elevated heart rate. So that's where it all got started. And where it's like, okay, I can eat this while I'm running, while I'm mountain biking, meeting some friends at Buffalo Creek. I'm going to bring a bunch of bars, wrap them in foil. I got positive responses. And that's what kind of got the gears turning from there. What separates it, other than that, they're not extruded, which is a process where everything's kind of ground up into a paste and squeezed out. So you can't really tell what's in there.
I guess I've never noticed that
Yeah,
before
that's
with
crazy.
most bars, but now when I think about like why they look the way they do, like that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for touching on that.
Yeah. It's an affordable way to do it.
Yeah.
So everything's made by hand, practicing organics. I tell people, the ingredients are everything you can buy in a grocery store. I can't hide that. You can turn it around and look at the ingredients. That would probably do it.
It's a pretty short ingredient list too, which I think is for me, I think that's a huge thing. There's not extra fluff in there or like random things that you've never heard of before.
Well, it seems like you've been like very intentional with like picking those ingredients, like how does that play into the philosophy of what Funbar is?
Well, with the OG recipe, the first bar that I made, I guess full disclosure, a recipe came from the community. My wife's a teacher, and a recipe came from one of the families years and years ago that she made these and gives them to her kids when they go hiking and stuff. And we started making them. I'm like, oh, these are good. So I started like, well, I'll take these ingredients out. I'll add these other ingredients in, and getting started, I don't know where to source, any lab built sugars or anything like that. So based off that recipe and then what else I could find, at Costco or at Vitamin Cottage or, anywhere else I was shopping to get ingredients, it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Like to keep it that way as long as possible. I'm in communications right now with some food scientists to help extend the shelf life, to help keep them moist and supple.
Sure. What is the shelf life right now?
90 days.
Okay.
And that's just me kind of shrugging my shoulders and saying, well, they tend to dry up about then, and I don't enjoy them as much
Yeah.
at that point.
That's a pretty good shelf life though. Like I know it's tough when you have like retail, but it's funny you say 90 days. I was just telling a story last night about Twinkies. I thought that like Twinkies, like it's a funny parallel, but like I always was under the assumption that like Twinkies never expired. It was like a nuclear food, you know? But I listened to a thing that they were talking about like after 60 days, like Twinkies lose their freshness basically. So they were having a really hard time, you know, when they first started putting them into retail heavily, like in convenience stores, because they weren't as soft and spongy as they should be. So they had to do a bunch of like engineering to figure that out. But
yeah,
kind of a crazy thing.
I thought they were an apocalypse food too.
Yeah.
Me too, dude. It like blew my mind when I heard that. I was like,
are they an apocalypse food now that they figured that out? Was that just early on?
I think that they will keep, but they're not at their peak, like goodness. But like that just blew my mind that they like degrade after 60 days so significantly. So
well,
if you want to enjoy yourself during the apocalypse, have some Twinkies.
There you go. I guess what I'm trying to say is like shelf life might be far longer than you think. It's just the quality falls off, you know.
Yeah.
That's where it gets tough with food products, right? Like you're in there having to like check dates on stuff in retail stores, and being a one-man show, that's really difficult. So it's cool to hear that you're actively trying to problem solve and figure out how to extend that day.
Yeah, and especially it's my little baby.
Yeah.
It's my product, so I'm probably hypersensitive to things
as you
like
should
that
be.
That other people are like, yeah, they've expired, they're 30 days past expiration. They still taste great.
Yeah.
Like, well,
it goes back to the product, right? Like you're trying to make something that's quality, and like you're not in this to become a bazillionaire. You're in this to do the right thing, and that's like a pretty the money's the given, right? Like money's given. Like we know you start a business to make money, but like you're trying to make a product that is great for people and like that people enjoy, and so putting attention on the details of, hey, this product is going to be good anytime you enjoy it.
Yeah, details first.
Yeah. You start a business to make money, but you make money by adding value.
Yes. Yeah.
So you got to focus on the value first.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's the funny thing when people talk about like, when you're starting a business, like find your why. And, people always are drawn towards the money. It's like, no, it's not a why. That's a given. Like you don't start a business to not make money. Like that's a byproduct of doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you do the right thing, the money comes. But
so my partner Jordan and I have been talking about this recently. The phrase "find your why." I think it's very intentional that the word "find" is in there and not something like "create your why," because she's been thinking about how to name kind of an idea that she has for herself, and I've been trying to tell her. And there's a lot of parallels to Funbar and how Funbar came about. Like don't try to create a name for something. Do the work that you need to do to discover that. And for you discovered this recipe based on, the community that you're around. You discovered the name based on the community that you're around. You didn't force anything into existence. It was sitting back, observing the people around you, listening to them, taking cues from all of that, and then implementing them into something cohesive and beautiful. And I think that that's such a authentic and genuine way to provide value in your community, in the community around you. I mean, it's a human-centered design approach, really.
Well, it's looking at things from a perspective of like found, not forced, like it is building community through collaboration. Like exactly what you're saying, like you're handing these things out in tin foil, and like that is the most collaborative thing you can do. Like, hey man, tell me if this sucks. Nope, it's great. Okay, cool. Let me try and continue to improve upon that. Okay, now we can sell this to people. I feel comfortable doing that. Like that's cool to build a community based on that. Like those first users are probably customers, and like they're probably your friends too, but like how cool is that to be somebody who tried that first and like, I was the guinea pig. That's cool. Yeah. It's a cool story.
We used to have coconut oil in the bars, and coconut oil liquefies at like, 75 degrees. So not a good thing to be in a bar, during the summertime in the mountains of Colorado.
in compostable packaging too.
Yeah. They were greasy. Then you're like trying to put your bike gloves back on and ride. And it's like, okay, we got to cut that out.
So I want to talk a little bit more about ingredients too, because talking about the intentionality behind them, it seems like the bars fit within the bounds of a lot of different dietary restrictions, from gluten-free to vegan. Like, you kind of appeal to all those people. Was that something that was intentional on your end, or did it just kind of happen? Did the flowers arrange themselves on that one?
Gluten-free just kind of happened. After moving towards like certified gluten-free oats, I was like, okay, well, there's something. I wanted to be 100% organic from the beginning, but that gets expensive.
Yeah.
So we're practicing organics as cost and supply will allow.
Do you think you'll ever get the certification? Is that something you want to chase, or? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important. I think it's the right thing to do when your ingredients are farmed properly with respect to the land, and pay the farmers a livable wage. I would like that to be reality.
Yep.
I joked early on, I was like, oh, I could make it dairy free. I could make it nut free. Originally I was like, I'm never going to make a vegan one. No way. I'm not going to go down that, militant road of veganism. But that's probably my favorite bar
Really?
out of all of them.
It's really good.
Yeah. And it's really easy to do. And I tried all the other bars that fit into that nut-free, dairy-free, vegan category, and I just can't get into them. And a couple of easy switches, and they still taste great.
That's so cool, man.
So I started that one, the free-for-all, based off that. And I was like, well, I could just make it vegan by adding agave syrup instead of honey, because I was already using a dairy-free butter that's a blend of seed oils. I was like, oh, well, that's an easy switch. So I tried it. I was like, oh, this is good. So I was like, all right, now I'm in the vegan category.
Heck yeah. Check that box.
Yeah. I joke that bar's going to save the world for the vegans out there.
I love it, man. Yeah, it's good to have something for everybody. That's super cool. So can you list off all the flavors you have right now? And then which one is your favorite?
Sure. Yeah, it all started with the OG recipe, cranberry chocolate. I have a exact same thing, the OG plus CBD, where I drip in 15 milligrams full spectrum CBD. I joke, there's a lot of voodoo out there about what CBD can and can't do, but it is very good at reducing inflammation in your system. So that's my pitch, help reduce that inflammation while you're out there creating it. Then it's kind of a third take on the cranberry chocolate is the free-for-all, along with being gluten-free. It's also nut-free, dairy-free, and vegan. Lemon blueberry. It's got a good citrusy, high-acid kick to it. That one I kind of really worked hard for, especially coming out of the wine industry, being an acid head, drinking a lot of high-acid white wines.
Yep.
I wanted something, in a bar that's damn near refreshing. So the citric acid in there, and the lemon.
Citric acid.
Oh.
It's so good.
It gives, it's acid in your foods and drinks that makes you salivate.
Yeah.
So if on big efforts, get that kind of cotton mouth, down the road, something with some acid in it will get you salivating and refresh the palate a little bit. That was the take on that.
That's really cool, actually.
And then the latest version is the Cherry Bomb, which is dark chocolate and coffee. And since my daughter originally named the company Funbar, I named that Cherry Bomb because when she was 7, 8, 9, she would always ask to have Joan Jett. When we get in the car or at home, like, couldn't you play Joan Jett? And we listen to.
That's sick.
Yeah, listen to her albums, and then the Cherry Bomb. So,
dude, I love it. Again, another cool, authentic piece to why something's named the way it is. I love that.
I got to figure out something for my boy. My son's 2 years younger than his sister, and he's always like, well, what's my piece in it? The next bar has got to be for him.
Yeah. I feel like based on everything you've said so far, naming wise, it'll just come pretty originally when it happens. You're going to be like, right on.
Yeah.
That's the fun thing, like not forcing anything. It's just, it's intentional. It's intentionally loose. You know, there's not like, I don't know, all of these like really intense, aggressive, thoughtful conversations about it. It's just very real, and the things that are important in your life and the people around you that are important in your life. And it's beautiful. I love it.
There's something to be said about being like intimately present to be able to pick up on those things too, right? Like I feel like that's where that comes from. Like if you're present in your day-to-day, you're present with your family, present with your vendors, whoever, like you're going to pick up on things that are going to make your business grow. Whereas if you're on the other side of that aisle and you're trying to force things through and just like, you know, strong arm things, you're going to miss a lot of the cues of like, hey, this is what people actually want. Hey, this is actually going to build your story. You know, like I think a lot of people sit on that other side of the aisle where they're just trying to like, you know, I need to make money. I'm going to strong arm this. I'm going to make it happen. And like you do miss out on a lot of those fundamental pieces, like a really cool name like Cherry Bomb. That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what comes next.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be rad, man. So far to you, what do you think the easiest part of running Funbar has been as this one-man show? That's a loaded question, I'm sure. Yeah. But
easy, small business, what?
Yeah, I know those things don't really go together.
What am I missing out on? How come I haven't found that?
What's been the most enjoyable part?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, easy and enjoyable. The R&D, getting to or making the time that is it's part of the business. I need to go out and run 10 miles and eat these. That's been a good thing. I joke now, being in the kitchen so much and not talking nonstop in my previous sales career. It's like, I love just being holed up in the kitchen and, you know, listening to podcasts and books and music, you know, throughout the day, and kind of stepping back from that world. I think that's been the easiest and the most fun. I'd be lying if I didn't say the most fun was seeing people's reactions once they do taste. Last year was the first time I did a farmer's market, and that was a blast. Seeing people come through and those reactions, especially for the free-for-all, like as I'm going down the line explaining what bars are what, you know, vegan, nut-free,
it's
dairy-free.
It's funny how those things have such a negative connotation too.
It is.
Like,
and then that's one where I'm like, oh, no, that's the one you're going to try.
Yeah.
You asked, which one do I try first? Try the one you're not interested in.
Yep.
And then they just like light up.
Being able to wow somebody who is so against it because it has all those like denominations, that's pretty special.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's been I think the greatest joy in this. And like you were just saying, being present, you know, building it from the ground up. It's like I'm not pushing snake oil on you. Like this is real ingredients, whole food, calorie dense product that's hopefully going to make you happy.
That's a good point that we haven't touched on yet. It is calorie dense. What's the intention? Well, how many calories per bar, and what's the intention there?
Oh man, yeah. There was no intention, but I was stoked when it came back from the lab on the initial nutrition facts that came back. 2-ounce bar, which is kind of around that industry standard, 300 calories per bar, which I haven't seen anybody out there that can match that size per calorie ratio.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I remember the first time I realized that, I was like, whoa, these things pack a punch.
Yeah.
Like considering like they're not big. And then you look at like, you know, a competitor that's like, you know, 2/3 the size, you know, way bigger. And yeah, you're packing just as much calorie almost. Yeah. Or more, in fact.
Yeah. And, you know, if you have to add that up, being a wannabe endurance athlete myself, you know, it costs money to keep buying more and more things to feed you through a 4, 6, 8, 10 hour
and then
effort.
you have to pack it with you.
And you have to pack it with you. I about jumped up to the moon when a guy told me he brought my bars to run UTMB. It's a 100-mile race out in what is it? Switzerland, France,
Switzerland,
Mont Blanc,
and, Italy.
Italy, all those countries.
Yeah.
He's like, I brought him with me to UTMB because I think you have to have 800 calories in your pack at various points throughout to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And he was like, 2 ounces, 300 calories, throwing those in my bag. Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's another one of those things that sets you apart though from like the other people out there doing it, is that you are able to pack that punch in such a bite-sized thing. That's pretty sick, man.
Yeah. We're in a lot of the other, foods and what do you call them without naming the brand? I don't even know what you call them. The little slime packets.
Oh, gels.
Gels. There you go.
Gels.
That's the word.
The little slime packets.
Oh, those
snot
are
rockets.
actually my least favorite things, dude. If I'm like bonked out on the side of the trail and somebody's like, "Do you want one of those?" I'm like, "Nah."
Well, that's because it's not real food.
No,
and it's
just
sugar.
Going back to the texture thing too, it's like that is the nastiest. Like, oh, I hate that, man. Ugh.
Yeah.
Different things work for different people, but
Totally.
like there's something to be said about the fact that your stomach is used to eating real foods.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden you haven't been training with it and you go out for an 8-hour effort and you're throwing gels into your stomach instead of the real foods that it's used to, like, and then all of a sudden you start feeling pretty bad, like there's probably a good reason why. you know?
Yeah. Always saying, this is something I learned early on in the wine world too. It's like, hey, if you think that's a good product,
Yeah.
More power to you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Same thing in the food world. If you dig goose, more power to you.
Well, it's all pretty subjective, right?
Yeah,
like that's
totally.
Everything in life is like that's, I think, something good to remember. It's like, this works really great for me. I love this. You might love it too, but you don't have to love it.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're not going to hurt my feelings. But yeah, it's subjective, man. And I think that's a really good approach to carry into things. And yeah, you put your best foot forward and you make the best thing that you believe in. But at the end of the day, it is subjective.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're crushing it on whatever you eat, you keep doing it. And I'll see you out there on the trails. Let's have some fun.
100%.
No pun intended.
A little
Let's
bit,
have some
maybe.
fun with a pH.
Yeah.
So we talk a little bit about, the easiest or the most enjoyable thing. What have been like the biggest struggles for you on a day-to-day basis?
Figuring it all out, really. The biggest struggles, there's a lot of them. Running a small business, the stress of how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay the mortgage? That's weighing heavily on me right now. It's realizing it's not always how much or what I can do. It's what problems I can solve. Taking a step back, have my moment of dropping F-bombs and, getting down and then be like, okay, that's not going to fix anything. What are we going to do to fix this or that throughout? That's been the toughest part. And also a biggest joy when that problem does get solved. You're like, oh shit, yeah.
Yeah. Talking about solutions, do you have like a specific way, like how you're approaching solution? Like, do you go for a run? Do you go for a drive? Like, what are your ways of like, problem solving? Do you talk to a friend? Like, yeah, I'm curious.
Running for sure. I feel like is just a good way to escape life and get out there and think about things. And especially if there's a problem within the business, gives me a chance to analyze and, talk to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been key.
Yeah, I like that. No, I think that's like such a great way to approach things because I heavily relate to that one. Like when I'm struggling with something, I go out and get on my bike and like if I'm not thinking about solving a problem, somehow I can solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But like if I'm sitting there beating
Right.
myself up thinking like, oh my God, I have to fix this, like everything's going to come crashing down. Yeah, it's this doom and gloom mentality, right? And then you get out there and you click your brain off for a second and all of a sudden like that idea floats in from the ether into your head and you're just like, oh, I know how to fix this. And then I'll often find myself in those moments, like the rest of my time outside exercising is so great because I'm like, I'm elated, man. I just solved the world's problem, man. And I'm getting ready to go back and fix everything. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, 100%. It's, I think it's necessary for all.
Yeah. I'd like to actually know the psychology behind why that happens. There's got to be some sort of brain chemistry that's happening. That's
some sort of exercise endorphin.
Yeah. Because most people I know that are in the business realm, like, you know, they always talk about like having their meetings out on the mountain bike or, you know, going for their runs or whatever it might be. But it is usually an exercise induced like aha moment. So, I wonder, I'm sure there's some studies out there that cover that. That'd be cool to kind of dig into.
Let's do this the second time out in the wild.
Let's do it. Just mic it up and just an outdoor podcast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually something I've thought about would be kind of fun, but heck yeah. Well, you know, talking about the struggles, talking about the easy stuff, like, are there any lessons that you've learned from previous jobs that you've been able to like instill in this business that you feel like have like propelled you forward?
Yeah, definitely being a salesman, you know, and that I think that can have a negative connotation too, just when it's said like that. But, you know.
That's a skill, man. That's a hard one.
It's definitely a skill.
Yeah. You know, 20 years of either working retail and talking to folks that walk through the door, or most of my time was on the wholesale side, me walking through a door and finding out, you know, who's the decision maker, how to chat with them, how to read their cues quickly, you know, to get my point across. Definitely being a salesman and stepping into a new world where, you know, in a bike shop or a running store or a grocery store, and selling my own product. You know, it's very similar to then, you know, when I was dragging a bag, you know, pulling corks and like, here, drink this.
Yeah.
Now it's here, taste this.
That's super cool to hear how well that translates too. You know, it's all pretty relative, and it's cool to hear that.
Yeah, and I never took myself too seriously, you know, in my previous career either. You know, I wasn't making the wine. If you like it, cool. If not, cool. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And just trying to keep it light. You know, I was a professional drug dealer most of my life, and
I still am, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. It's funny.
Yeah, did Michael Pollan say quitting coffee was the hardest thing for him when he, you know, cut out all chemicals and drugs?
That's actually
one of his
when
books.
people ask me what I do, that's one of my responses sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I deal drugs, man.
Yeah. And people laugh. People are like, no, you sell wine.
Yeah, like, yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
exactly.
Alcohol, like the most dangerous drug on the planet.
Yeah. Straight up.
Yeah, definitely, you know, spending that time grinding, learning how to sell has been, I think, the biggest asset to make this transition into starting the Funbar.
That's super cool. Something that just popped into my head is like, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert? Like being out there selling, you have to be so extroverted and like,
yeah.
But then hearing you say like how much you're enjoying the time in the kitchen listening to these podcasts and stuff, like, which way do you think you lean more?
It depends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And 50-50.
Okay, that's fair. I feel
That's
very
an
similar
interesting
to
answer,
you actually.
Yeah.
Like everybody always tells me that I'm very extroverted. I'm like, nah, dude, I love being at my house by myself, not talking to anybody. Like if I have to go out and be extroverted, I can be, but I have to like make myself do that. But yeah, I fall in line with you. I feel very 50-50 on that.
Yeah, I look forward to the times when it's like, all right, let's get out, let's socialize, let's mingle, let's do this. But then I also look forward to the time of, nah, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to sit down and, you know, hang out with the kids. We're going to go do our own thing.
Yeah, that's super cool.
It's kind of nice. Like you do have a pretty good balance the way that you're running everything right now, where you have that time in the kitchen, you know, just by yourself baking bars. And then you're at so many events throughout the summer. Like you're not just at the farmers markets, but you're going to, you know, running events, cycling events, you're holding booths just to get people to try your product.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of how you're managing that balance between time by yourself and time like still as a salesperson talking to people?
Yeah.
Well, kind of. Yeah. I can relate to exactly what that response was, though, because right now I feel that same way where I'm just like, I don't feel like I'm managing anything. I'm just existing in this space, and somehow things are getting done, but okay.
Yeah. Going home to a soon to be 9 and 11-year-old. I wouldn't call that being by myself.
Yeah.
But it's a different form. Yeah. I think that escape is, thankfully my wife is very generous, giving me the time to get out and go run, go ride and have that, that real outlet, to let go, because when the kids are ready, it's go time.
Yeah.
When business is ready, it's go time.
Right.
Talking about like the managing of time and just that response that she just had, like what keeps you going and keeps you motivated to push forward? Is there anything specifically that you're looking at where you're just like, okay, like this is making me show up today? Or is it just like making sure the kids can eat and they get new shoes, like I'm sure that's a huge motivator, but
yeah, that is a big motivator. It's a lot of that, of having that anxiety and the fear of, is this going to work? Will I be able to, pay the necessary bills, in the future? That is one of the fears. A big driver of that is the joy out of it. And, the pride in like, oh man, this is happening. I was, coming back from, I think it was the first Leadville race, the marathon and the heavy half, driving back down to Denver, and it was like this cloudy, rainy. You remember that weather, Chase?
Yeah.
What years was this? Last year?
This was last summer, and having that feeling going into it, and like, oh shit, like Scratch Labs is over there, Goo is at the next event, and it's like I'm just this little energy bar nobody.
Yeah.
And I'm here
hanging out among the giants, dude.
This is the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh God, is this going to go well? Am I going to look like a fool? And everything went great. And it was such a blast and so cool. And the response from racers and support and everybody was incredible. And like driving back into town, having that feeling of, fuck yes.
Mm-hmm.
With a PH.
Yes.
That is something that is so euphoric, though, isn't it? Like that moment of realizing, like, holy shit, I'm doing this.
Yes.
Like, this is a thing. Like, that, it makes my, like, hair on my arm stand up thinking about it for you right now. Like, I feel that every once in a while. Like, the other night I was leaving here and I was, like, shutting one of the lights off and I, like, looked into the shop and I was like, oh, yeah. Like, we did this. This is super cool.
This is mine.
Mm-hmm.
This is our place.
Like, that's bizarre, it is a very euphoric feeling because, yeah, it's something you dream about for so long. You work so hard and then you do that big event. You're among the giants and it goes great. And you look back and you're like, oh, I guess I'm kind of like them then. Like, I fit in.
Yeah. And it was everything about it too. It was going to run in the rain, sleeping in the back of my truck, and then plus the event and sales and demos and all that. I was hopefully never forget this part, but driving back through the mountains and it was still kind of raining, and Steve Miller's Misty Mountain Hop. I don't even know if that's the right name of the song, but like very angelic, guitar and voice. And that song came on and I was like, I was nearly in tears.
Oh, dude, I love that.
This is really happening.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were talking a little bit before this podcast that there's so much focus on always like every year, like doing 10% better, 15% better. I think there's so much value in taking the time to just stop and realize that where you are right now has been something that you've been working for the last 2 years to feel.
Yeah.
Right. Like you've been working your whole life to own your own shop like this that you have for Traction. You've been working, the last 2 years on Funbar just to get that point of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to focus on the ahead. You can just like resonate in what's right now.
Yeah. Just the other day, it was like such a weight off my shoulders when I stopped, and I was like, today was a great day.
Yeah.
Had a great meeting with someone that could really influence the future of the business, and talking with, new packaging provider. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, today was a great day.
Well, that's like where it becomes like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's we can easily dwell on the, oh, this is hard. This is difficult. Why is this happening? But to be like, oh yeah. Yeah, there's still a lot of things to fix, but like today was a good day.
Yeah. Celebrate those wins,
Yes.
man. Cause like this is something that I've fallen victim to a lot, especially in business, but like even just in life, it's so easy to look at all the things that are fucked up or shitty.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so easy to do that. And then you find yourself like looking down all the time, you're bummed, and you're noticing the things that are fucked up all the time, as opposed to what you just pointed out. You're like, hey, I had some wins today and I'm going to smile about that. And guess what? The next day, if you focus on that, you're going to only notice the wins. And like, there is something to be said about looking at, even though you're living within chaos because you're a small business owner, if you can look at the things that are positive and are wins, those are the things you will continue to focus on. And going back to that euphoric feeling, which is such a fleeting thing, like that's the thing you're chasing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I know that for myself. Like I'm like, I want to feel like that all the time. What can I do to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a much better and healthier rush to chase than, the woe is me,
Mm-hmm.
because no one gives a shit about that.
No
one else is going to step in and fix it for me.
No.
But yeah, you gotta treat yourself right and celebrate your own personal goals, and professional goals too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So talking about all this stuff, I'm curious, like, have there been any defining risks that you've taken with the brand that have paid off in a big way? Yeah, maybe it's the Leadville 100 that you're just talking about. Like, I mean, that sounds like a big risk. I don't know how much it costs or anything, but something like that,
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd say that was a big financial risk at the time. It was like just under $2,500 to be up there for 3 events. But, to be up there at, one of the top 4 100-mile runs across the world, the 100 bike, and then the marathon and heavy half. Those are the people I want to be in front of.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my customers, But at the same time, you're picking up your kids and taking them to soccer practice and they need a snack. Those are my customers too. You might have to edit some of this.
That's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a pass on the question, but everything has been a risk.
That's not a pass at all, because that's very fair. Especially, I mean, again, 2 years in, like, you're risking it every single day.
Yeah. Punishing my savings account, that I've built up over the years is a risk.
Yeah, certainly.
I have to be able to, refill that at some point and then some. Trying something new, learning, growing. I think that's what I joked about in my previous career was like, what, you're going to pay me to read books and drink wine? Okay, I'll learn, about this region or this grape, and completely changing gears and doing this.
Yeah, it's coming out of your pocket, and like, that's a huge difference. And I love that you touch on, like, depleting the savings account to like basically fuel the fire for the dream. Like, that's something I think that doesn't get talked about enough, especially in these worlds when people, like we talked earlier in the episode, you can Google basically anything on how to start a business. But then when it comes to funding, like, I think it's kind of like, people are talking about it a little more now, but for the most part, like, people don't like to talk about how they're funding their businesses. And I think a lot of that's because, there's a lot of money out there that's coming from sources that aren't people like bootstrapping it, and they want it to look like they are, like, oh, we're a small business, we have to feed our kids. But then there's actually people out there that are doing that. And I love when there is that transparency, because to me, that's where I want to spend my money. I want to spend my money with people who are doing it for the right reasons, as opposed to somebody who's telling a facade of a story to make me buy something. I'm not a fan of that. So yeah, I love the fact that you've touched on that. And yeah, it's a vulnerable thing to do too.
It is. Finances is very personal for something that is like so unhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah, people get aggressive and self-defensive quickly when it's like, well, how much you got?
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that there is a lot of beauty in being transparent about, hey, we're bootstrapped as heck. This is how we're doing it. I mean, you're dealing with an issue like that right now with packaging. Like, and you've been very transparent about that. And I think that's really cool. Like, I loved what you shared on Instagram the other day. Like, hey, we're just going to run it this way right now because we can't get this compostable packaging and we're going to solve the problem. But you've built a loyal fan base. That's incredible that they're just, send us the bars, man. We want them.
Yeah, that's been a great joy. That was a hard thing to do. And that was definitely a hard day, when I realized that there was nothing to put them in.
Yeah.
But it was amazing to feel that love from the customers out there that are like, can I just swing by and we'll put them in a paper bag? Literally a woman said that. It was awesome.
That's awesome, dude. Wow.
But it's just one more thing to fix and one more thing to learn and keep on trudging.
You know what the cool thing is probably, 5-6 years from now, you're going to look back on that and be like, man, I wish I had a problem that small again. That's something that like has really dawned on me. Like the further we get down the road with traction is like, when we have problems now, I'm like, oh man, they're way bigger and they're way more expensive. And I think back to myself in a similar position running out of packaging or something, and like, dude, I was freaking out. Now I'm like, oh, I want that again. Please give me that problem. Like, because it didn't cost me $20,000, whatever, it's like, it gets, it's funny how it just like the hindsight thing starts kicking in the further you're going. So I'm excited to revisit this conversation, years down the road from now and hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm in the same boat of.
I think you will be. Just based on all the things we've kind of covered today, like you're doing so many cool, real things, not just the ingredients you're putting in are real, but the efforts you're putting in are real as well. And that speaks volume to the brand that you're trying to create and you are creating. So props to you on that, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a little bit about the sacrifice and risk, but I'd love if you could share like some insights into the long-term goals for what Funbar is going to be or what you hope it's going to be.
Yes. The long-term goals.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Put me up. Oop.
It's like a dating app,
Yeah.
It's like a dating.
I want to create a business and a company that everybody involved is happy to be involved. It's, it is a business. We need to make money. We need to, keep the lights on. But I want to find a way to keep the joy through that capitalist drive, if there is such a way.
I think there is.
I think there is too.
And I think the fact that you're even considering that at the stage you're at right now, like you'll find a way to strike that balance.
Yeah, it's hard. I've had it going through my head for years now, but it's hard to actually say out loud and put, intelligent words to it. But just to create a place that, provides joy for employees, for customers, and we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Kind of feeling, whatever it may be. Like we were talking about earlier, that idea of growth over growth over growth, year after year after year. Like, sure, some growth is going to be good, but when it starts to sacrifice the happiness of the business, then we got to take a step back.
Yeah.
And, reevaluate. Without getting into the nitty gritty of, sales and stores and regions and things like that. Really, that's the long-term goal.
I like that. There's something to be said about having the intentions and being present enough to try and operate as a net benefit to everybody. And I think the fact that you even touched earlier on, like, hey, I want to make sure that like we're setting ourselves up for success to make sure we can even, bring farmers up with us as we grow. And then talking about like future employees, like operating as a net benefit to everybody involved. That's something that is very admirable, and it's very hard to do, but it's possible, and it's hard to like talk about, swinging the pendulum back and forth on the capitalistic piece of it, where it's like, yeah, I want to be people focused, but we also have to make money to make people happy. Like, it's a very hard balance to strike. But again, hearing how present you've been from the beginning of this till now, I don't doubt that you'll be able to figure that out. So
yeah,
cool.
I think a lot of that comes from working with restaurants, and the farm to table idea of, well, okay, where is this steak coming from?
Mm-hmm.
I want to go visit the farmer and see the cows. Where am I getting, these greens? Let's go check it out. Let's go buy directly from them. And kind of the Patagonia mentality, when a clothing company tells you don't buy another jacket, fix it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah.
Well, and that goes literally against the grain of clothing companies, right? Like fast fashion is not about that. And so
right.
When a company that is that size, which is crazy, they are such a massive brand, and they're saying, hey, like, we'll fix that, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And to start a repair shop of their own.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the mentality I'm shooting for. It'd be awesome, to one day be a certified B company, and not just do it to woohoo, look at us, but to actually, fund initiatives and be a part of the greater good of the sports world, the food world. How can we make changes, when it comes to, trash on the trails? What are we doing to be a part of cleaning that up?
Mm-hmm.
Some trail maintenance and, all the things out there.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, it really, there's a quote that just pops into my head when we're talking about this, but it is rising tide lifts all ships. And that's something that I've always firmly believed in since we've started this brand even, is just like, if we can pour into everything outside of us, like before we even paid ourselves, we were always donating to like trail organizations or whatever. And I'm like, we use these things. We love these things. Our business is predicated on the success of these things. Like, of course we have to fund them for us to actually fund ourselves, like, and going into things with that mindset, like talk about being like a certified B Corp, like being able to do those things and not carry the certification is super cool. Like I admire that. Even just you talking about like practicing organics, like not carrying the cert, but like you're practicing it. And that's special, man, because you don't have a stamp on there, but you're doing all the right things. And yeah, not a lot of people would do that the other way around, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always wonder, what's really going on behind the scenes of those certifications and whatnot.
Yeah. They're very political, and that's like kind of what bums me out about any sort of stamp on a bag. Like it turns into like, well, like we gave it to all these brands and now you have to buy it. And that's, I got my eyes open to this years ago. And we can cut this out too if we don't want it on the episode, but I think it's very interesting, and I think it's, worthwhile to talk about, especially for a food product. But I had a friend who was working for an agency, and they made a potato certification, and it was Idaho grown potatoes. And they gave it to the 2 largest Idaho potato growers. And those people started excelling in sales, and all the other growers then had to buy that certification, which was, thousands of dollars to reapply and, carry every year. And once I heard about that, I was like, oh my gosh, is that how all these certifications work? And kinda. And it's like, wow, man, like, are we actually doing good things to carry these certifications, or are we doing it for capitalism? And that's like where I struggle with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like buying carbon credits.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, can't we just try and go back to the beginning of the process and figure out how we can offset those things without buying a credit to plant trees or whatever that actually does? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
what does that actually do?
That's lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
Oh, you're carbon neutral because you're paying to quote unquote offset carbon. Like, I don't buy it.
It's very interesting.
Why don't
to
you
me.
turn your facility into a solar powered,
Mhm.
machine or whatever it may be?
Yeah. And I don't want to dismiss either that a lot of these certifications are made for good and
Yes.
they have done a lot of good change. I don't want to dismiss that by any means.
True.
But there is a level of like politic that gets involved when it's like, but you have to pay for this, you have to submit this much product. And I'm not even talking so much for like brands like you or I, but it is the people who are growing these products as well. Like they don't have the funds or, the teams to be able to push these things through to get these certifications. So then again, capitalism wins the day when they come and buy a farm and get the certification and squash the farmer who's actually doing the right thing. Like, sorry, a little bit of a rant there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think we're on the same page there. Do it for the right reasons, and whether it's labeled or recognized or not.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll show its head in the right way. It all comes out in the wash is really what the reality of that is like, if you do the right things or if you do the wrong things, like it will be known at some point in time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool thing when it comes to business. Like, yeah, if you do what you're supposed to do, people know, and they can feel that too. That's where transparency is a very beautiful thing. So,
Yeah. Agreed.
heck yeah. So yeah, this is where it gets kind of fun.
All right.
Yeah. So is there anyone special you'd like to give a shout out to who's really helped you along the way?
I couldn't have done any of this without my wife. She's been amazing, very patient. Give a shout out to Jessie.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Jessie, man.
She's been awesome, allowing me the time and energy to get this far in the business for sure. She's given me lots of great ideas. She's pulled in the reins a few times, which has been very beneficial, like we talked about earlier. Yeah, massive shout out to my wife. Love you.
Hell yeah.
Got to give a shout out to the man across the table here, Chasing Joe. They've been tremendous in helping me out with some graphic design, helping to get the name out throughout. That's been really rad to see what we've been able to do. Off a random Instagram DM to Jordan. I was like, hey, you're a runner. You want to try these?
Yeah, she was psyched when she got that message.
Yeah, I've told you this. That all started seeing her in a post with a shirt that said, eat your veggies, take epic dumps.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. She would have a shirt that says
So-
so too.
So I had a good laugh at that. And that was, trying to find ambassadors and things like that, way too soon in the business. I think that'll come, and that effort will be around soon enough, getting some folks on board. But that was before I even knew what I was doing. But yeah, we've struck up a great friendship, and they've been really helpful in getting the business off the ground.
That's super cool. It's cool to hear that came off like a random Instagram DM too. Like that's again the beauty of the world that we live in now. Like you can create cool partnerships based off of just like, hey, like I like what you're doing. Want to check this thing out that I'm doing? Great. Now we're friends, and the world's your oyster at that point.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun getting to know you over the last few years too. And Joe and I talk about this a lot, that it's so valuable to trust the person more than the product that they're selling. You buy into the people, not the products.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the biggest thing that we've noticed with you, and why we've wanted to support you in any way that we can, with both of you, to be honest, and both of your businesses. Like we just see like two really amazing people that really believe in what they're doing, and we believe in both of you. So,
And it really helps that we also both have really rad products.
Yes.
no, it's the truth. People first, I think with anything, people first.
Agreed.
So, as we get to wrapping this thing up, do you have any parting motivating words for anybody listening that may be looking to start their own venture or branch out on their own?
Take that first step. Do it. I'm so happy that I've been taking all these risks for the past few years. It's really fulfilling to do so. So if you're out there and you want to start something, do it. Talk to everybody and anybody about how and why and what, and get advice. I've been lucky to meet a whole lot of people out there in various aspects of the food industry that, whether it's a sentence worth of helpful information or, an enormous amount. Find people, talk to them, gobble up any form of energy and advice you can find, but do it.
Heck
Yeah.
That's something that I've been trying to be conscious about in the last year or so, is being okay with not knowing what I'm doing and letting other people know that. I think that there's so much in society where it's like, oh, well, I shouldn't like show my hand and let people know that I have no idea what I'm doing. But as soon as you let go of that ego and accept, kind of just say like, no, can you tell me more about that? Because I've never heard of that before, or I have no idea what I'm doing here. People are always so gracious with their time, or usually gracious with their time. And if they're not, they're probably not the people that you want to be talking to anyway.
Totally.
Yeah, get comfortable with saying, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that also expands your network pretty rapidly, because you start to realize the people that you've most likely deemed as very successful also don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason that they have become that or look like they know what they're doing is because they've made a lot of mistakes.
And ask a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. That's a good sentiment. So thanks for sharing that, man. That's special. Heck yeah. Well, before we wrap this up, can you let people know where they can learn more about Funbar or try some in the future?
For sure. You can find us at funbar.com. That's PHUNBAR. You can find us on Instagram at Funbar. Then that's it.
Right on, man.
Yeah. You can shoot me an email via the website. I'm happy to send out samples. We are in a packaging crisis at the moment, but working hard to fix that as we speak. So
yeah, I'm excited to see the future of Funbar's packaging.
It's
going to be really cool.
It'll stay compostable. That is one thing I won't bend on that. It's the last thing we need is more plastic raining down from the sky. Yeah, it'll stay compostable. We'll see what shapes and sizes and graphic designs come from it.
It's going to be cool, man. Nice progression. That's the beauty of the place where you're at with Funbar too. That 2-year mark is huge, and the progression that's going to come next is going to be even bigger. So looking forward to seeing that, man. But yeah, with all that being said, thank you guys so much for tapping into this episode. If you're enjoying these episodes on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening to them on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon, please leave us a review. It helps get the word out and allows us to keep this project rolling. Thank you for being a part of the Traction family, and we'll catch you on the next one. Keep being scared of normal.